Welcome, everybody. My name is John Cohan. I am a corporate attorney here at Gesmer Updegrove, where we're going to be talking with a very talented group of executives discussing founders and startup companies, some roadmaps, some pitfalls they need to think about. And my very experienced guests here are going to be able to entertain us with some of the information that they've gleaned and experience that they've had over the years.
I'm Bob Rizika. I'm the CEO of Viatech. Viatech's based in South Carolina. Essentially, we're an anti-engine green tech company. If you think about all those work trucks you see on the road during the day, they work maybe 8-9 hours a day, and they leave their engine idling to power all the equipment on that. So we build systems that essentially run the hydraulics, the air conditioning, the heating, the lights, etc., everything on the vehicle, so you can keep the engine off during the day while you're doing your work.
I'm Dan Sirk with Go-To Marketing. Basically what we do is we help early stage technology, B2B based technology startups get on a 2x, 3x growth curve in order for them to get to their Series A.
Rick Clemons, I'm the managing partner of Clemons Consulting. We are for earlier stage companies, fractional CFO, controller, and VP of finance support operation. We don't do any audit or tax work. We're strictly the client accounting services. So for your later stage, middle market and public companies, technical accounting, audit support, M&A advisory, and earlier stage companies, we also go through the sell-side readiness and take them through the process.
We're lucky enough to have you guys here today to talk to us about some of the pitfalls that founders need to be aware of and think about as they're either getting their companies off the ground or looking to obtain financing or some next level of what they're trying to achieve in their company. So the first thing I want to do is I want to turn to Bob and ask him, from a financial and strategic point of view, what are the most commonly held kind of blind spots for early stage companies in your view?
It's a great question, John. I'd say one of the biggest mistakes or blind spots people have is, they have an idea, they have a technology, they want to marry those two things together for a company, and they're wholly tend to be focused on the technology. And they just want to put all their money into technology, they want to build it out, and then they want to go sell it. And the issue is, you might have the right problem statement, you might not. You might have the right technology, you might not. But really what you have to do is get out and go visit customers and figure out if you have the right fit for the market. Because it's likely that your idea will be good, your technology will be pretty reasonable, but to really nail the market, you'll have to make a bunch of changes. And you really only figure that out if you've met with, 5, 10, 15, 20 potential customers. It's amazing what you learn when you go do that.
It's a really good point. A lot of times founders, I think, are trying to develop something and then going out and see if they can find a market for it, right? Rather than sort of doing that the other way around. Yeah. Dan, in your position as a chief marketing officer, probably see a lot of that, right? Where folks are, kind of ready, shoot, aim before they're really thinking about that.
So to me, the biggest mistake that folks make is not understanding what stage they're in, right? So if you're in that product market fit stage where you're trying to wrap your solution around a problem, you've got to think about your investments in a totally different way, because your primary focus in that instance is about learning. It's not actually about revenue, right? So what people will sometimes do is pour gas on the fire before they actually even understand and have that product market fit established. And when that happens, that's when cash gets burned, right? So this is a mistake that I see all the time, is not understanding what stage you're in and then not burning your cash in the right way because you're not prioritizing the right thing, learning versus growth.
Yeah, really good point as far as burning the cash, right, Rick? I mean, you're seeing from that angle kind of what's going in, what's coming out, right? And really, where are they concentrating? Where are they focusing? Are they really at the hot spots they need to be at? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you see a lot of that in what you do.
Yeah. Before I go down to that side of the comment, I want to reinforce. I was on a call yesterday with an investor and one of my clients that is going through fundraising. And the question the investor asked point blank is, have you spoken to customers yet about what you're developing? Is this what they want to buy? Or are you just developing something because it's a cool widget and there's never going to be a market for it? So having those early conversations with potential customers, making sure that it's the pull, not the push of the product that you're developing. Now, going back to the burning capital, one of the big things that we often see is the distraction. There's so many different shiny objects that you can do with your technology, whatever it is that you're developing. What can you do really well? What do your customers want to buy? And focus on that. Every shiny object, those are great white spaces when you're talking to investors about if you raise additional capital or when you have revenues, we can go down and do X, Y, or Z in addition to our primary track. But don't get distracted and burn yourself out of capital by trying to do too much or doing everything half-assed.
Dan said, put fuel on the fire, and then you start to burn cash. So my experience in that is, as soon as you start trying to really sell the product, you hire salespeople, you hire marketing people, you squeeze your product in some place it doesn't really need to be or doesn't have a really good fit. It's not completely finished. You need to hire service people to support it because it's not working right. And suddenly your burn rate just goes through the roof before you've really figured out what your product is, how it's built right, and really where the right fit is. And that's when you said that, just made me think.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, knowing the right place to bring in leadership, right, is another thing, right? I deal with so many founders that it's my baby, I know what I'm doing, I can do it. They may be very well at the technology, right? Or they may be very well at the financial piece, but they can't be everything to everybody in all places, right? So the next question becomes, so that natural inflection point, when do you bring in either full-time or fractional leadership on the executive team in order to flesh out some of these issues?
When you're too distracted by administrative or non-core issues that you're not able to execute on your mission. If you are finding that you're spending your 12, 14 hours a day focusing on things that are not advancing your mission, your initiative, your technology, your whatever it happens to be, then you need to surround yourself by the right people. The balancing act of that is, it's not a gift. So do you have the capital, either through dilutive, non-dilutive financing revenues, to pay for that or not? And biting off more than you can chew too early is equally as, in service providers that is, or employees, biting off too much too early is equally as problematic as bringing them in too late.
Right, right.
So it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, there's a huge balance there. I mean, Bob, you're leading a team now that took over fairly recently, right? Yeah. And sort of seeing how they play and move together and sort of how they orchestrate, understanding where that inflection point is. I mean, are they the right people? Do you want to consider, generally speaking, the people that you have in place? Do you need to think about either putting them in different spots to replace them, which are tough decisions that you got to make, especially when you're either parachuting in to try and help a company, right? Yeah. Or you've been there for a while and you're so embroiled in it, you can't really make that decision. You can't step out of yourself to sort of do that.
Well, so Rick had a good point. When I stepped into Viatech, they really had too many employees and they had too many people doing things that we didn't need done. So the first thing we did is cut the team back to align our spend with sort of where the company was. And we took all the different jobs and, people had multiple jobs. Our CFO took on HR, took on a couple other roles. And my perspective on it was get tighter, cut the costs, figure out where you really need the extra help. And to Rick's point, when my CFO started getting to a point where he didn't have enough time to do it all, and he didn't have enough time because our sales were scaling and we now had other things we had to do, then you could peel that off. But then peeling that off, thinking of fractional people to bring in, is again, just sort of like if you're thinking tech, cloud computing, only use what you need and don't pay for the extra, right? So from a fractional perspective, you can get great people that'll come on for a small amount of time or a certain amount of time to execute what you really need. And that's hard to do, right?
Yeah, a lot of times, especially, Dan, you can probably speak to this. I know Rick, all three of you can, that when you come in, at that point, depending on how many employees, for instance, Bob, you had a number of employees. You came in, you're almost looked at as the black hat, right? Like, what's this person going to do? Are they going to be cleaning us out? Are they going to be cleaning us up? Like, what does that mean for me? And so what kind of response or reaction do you get when you end up getting on the team?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the team. It depends on the stage the company's in, right? So there are times when you step in and you're the person who's going to be like restructuring things and figuring things out. Most of the engagements that I have are with companies that have product market fit and are trying to figure out how to get to the scale that they want to. Yeah. So there are sometimes hard choices with regard to where we spend money, but the nature of the work and the go-to-market motion is really what dictates where we make our investments, right? Yeah. When you think about that phase of work, it's really all about building systems and processes that allow for repeatable growth, right? And if you're installing that, the skill set associated with it is so different from, hey, we've got a system in place, now it's just about managing it. Yep. So the nature of your resources and who's right for what jobs really evolves over the course of the business and the different phases that it's in. Sure. So it's not like, hey, you got the perfect person for this startup who's a total growth hacker, but once you reach 10 million bucks, that guy might not be the right guy anymore. Exactly. So when you're in this growth phase and when you're moving through these different stages, there are always moments when you do have to evaluate, step back and be like, are these the right people? Are these the right functions based on where we are?
Including, by the way, the founder. I mean, the founder may be the person who wants to be that CEO, but his or her strength may not be in that position. A lot of times I've had discussions with clients where I say, look, you've now grown to a certain stage, okay? And now it's time to step aside and let a professional, quote unquote, CEO like yourself, Bob, that steps in and is able to kind of, anchor the team and then be able to deploy the right resources. I mean, that a founder sometimes has to realize that, okay, for the greater good, I may need to step out of that way and go into a position that maybe I'm the CTO and not the CEO kind of thing. Right?
One of the most successful companies I worked with over the years, the technical founder was actually just a mid-level manager in the engineering group by the time the company was at scale. He still owned the lion's share, and it was an incredibly successful company, but he was not an executive leader. Ultimately, he left because he was ready for growth, and there wasn't a place for him to grow within his own organization at that point in time.
Wow.
That's what happens.
Yeah. I mean, you get to a point, right? I mean, at the very beginning, yes, they are needed. It's ground zero, it's bootstrapping. But once you get to that inflection point of you really need to bring in a professional team, a more professional team that's done this before. It's a tried and true model, right? We see a lot of that. And so, which kind of flips me to the next thought process, which is capital allocation, right? And this sort of is related, but for you, Bob, where do you think the most common sort of capital allocation mistakes occur, whether it's early stage or even mid stage?
Again, I'd go back to at any stage, when you start building the organization and when you start going to market, all your costs go up, at every stage. So it's constantly making sure we're ready and the sales support the next growth. At least for me, I always view it that way. There are some people, my roommate from college started a multi-billion-dollar company, and he would go and he would put the pedal down and he would go all in, and he'd be going towards the wall at 1,000 miles an hour. And he has built some highly multi-billion-dollar companies. That's not me, right? For the rest of us, you sort of live more day to day. Right. And it's, how do I consistently, solidly build the company, and how do I manage the cash flow and the people and the growth with our customer growth, right? And you can take some risks every now and then, right? Sure. But that's maybe a more true and tried. But then there are people that go the other way.
Well, and isn't it really about failure rate, right? So yeah, you can throw your foot down on the gas pedal and go like you're shot out of a cannon, and I would guess that your failure rate when you behave that way is probably 95%, right? Whereas if you make sure that the business justifies the growth and are kind of more thoughtful about it. To me, that's it. So I think you're going to minimize your failure rate by making sure that you understand where you are in the process and that the opportunity for growth is there and that the spend is justified as opposed to throwing your foot all the way down on the gas. But both can work. I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's the tortoise and the hare, right? Which one's really gonna win? So for you, the more granular question, right, from a cap allocation point of view, tell us about that.
So it depends on your runway and where you are in that life cycle stage. If you're at a point in your business where you're looking at your runway and you've got time, you can take more risks early. If you're toward the end of your runway and your near-term cash out point is fast approaching, you get far more conservative in where you deploy your capital. Having a very hard conversation with one of my clients today because they are in a near-term cash out. They're in the middle of a fundraise. Fundraise activities are going exceptionally well, but the checks aren't in yet. Term sheets are coming. Don't spend money you don't need to. Someone wants to go to Singapore for a conference. After the fundraise is complete and the checks start coming in, yes, right now, I can't say that's a good idea. It might only be 3 weeks till we say yes, but today is not the day to say yes to that. Whereas you have 18 months to a cash out point, it's pretty easy to say, we can find 10 grand for a plane ticket over the next 18 months and make up for it.
It's the push and pull, right? Which one are you doing? Which one do you take? So exactly. So I want to flip now into talking more about balancing, right? I mean, this is all a balancing act in a lot of respects for founders. Let me ask you, Rick, when a founder thinks about balancing growth and operational discipline, when should he or she should be doing that, and what's the best way to start thinking about that?
Wow, that is a great question. In the early stages, it's growth focused. I mean, you've got to grow because if you don't start getting accelerated traction early, and that could be in your development of an engineering task or in revenue growth, depending on what your product or service may be, you need to be focusing on showing development because development is what's going to attract investment. Operational discipline that's more along the lines of as I say to my kids, DDSS. Don't do stupid, you can fill in the last S. Do you need to buy the swag when you're a two-person company and you're bootstrapped? Do you need a brand new widget when you could procure a secondhand refurbished unit at half the price? So you always want to have an eye on that operational discipline, but you've got to focus on growth early. As you get a little bit later stage, you've got investments, you've got board meetings, and you've got to answer to people. The operational discipline becomes ever more important because now it's, what did you say you were going to do? Did you accomplish it? Did you do it on budget, over budget, under budget?
Yeah, kind of one leads to the other, right? I mean, the quicker you grow, the more need there is for that discipline.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I would have said the exact opposite. So to me, when you're really early stage and you're still trying to figure out product market fit, if you're trying to chase growth, you're burning cash unnecessarily, right? You've got to learn what your market is. You've got to learn what the need is. You've got to learn how to tell your story. And that does not require a lot of people and a lot of cash to burn, right? If you start hiring people to go out and sell, the founders should go out and sell the first 10 units, right?
Yeah.
So for me, operational discipline is important to make sure that you've got the runway you need in order to learn the things you need to learn. Then you can come out of that and start actually saying, okay, now I know what my ICP is. I know what I'm selling. I know how to tell my story. Now I'm going to start spending some money, right, and burning some cash in order to drive that growth. Now, and then it does hockey stick, right? Once you get to a certain size, you've got to get back to operational discipline, right? It's like, hey, okay, now we need to make sure we're spending money as cost effectively as possible. So I agree that like towards the end, it definitely boomerangs. But to me, that early stage is not about growth; it's about discipline.
So I think we're saying the same thing, just slightly different, truth be told, because I'm not intoning go out and hire a bunch of people to do what it takes to get to the growth. It's more being very scrappy in how do you get to that growth versus being truly carte blanche in how you get to that growth. It's not a matter of being laissez-faire about it in any way, shape, or form. It's just being scrappy and focusing on it versus later on being a little bit more opportunistic.
And for you, Bob, I mean, you came in at a point, I think, where there was growth, but then there was a huge need for that operational discipline, right? I mean, and
Right.
which could, to Dan's point, could then hopefully catapult you to that next growth level.
So there's 2 points I make. One, I came in at this company at a later stage where they'd gone through stuff. They were just spending money in the wrong areas. They needed to, as we spoke later, really laser focus on where the revenue opportunities were, where the product fit was. And they needed to push the money hard in that area and not in the other areas, right? Because they had a whole base set of customers. They had a reproducible model. They had a sales process that was cookie cutter validated. And now that you need to spend money hard there and stop spending money in the other areas. Having said that, my daughter's starting a company now. And my whole point to her, because it's an early stage startup, is if you can't figure out how to get customers to go pay for what you want to go do, don't do it. Because, by the way, you're the founder, you're the CEO, get out there, go close orders, go get customers. And by the way, if they won't give you an order and they won't pay for it, then that tells you something right up front about the fit, right? So, I agree with Dan, but also to Rick's point of be scrappy. She uses her frequent flyer miles she has to go do the accounts. She does what she can do until she gets sales in.
Yep.
And that's the very early stage, right?
Yeah, that's key. And I think that leads us to our next topic or discussion point, which is, what separates those founders that are coachable, right, and execution focused from those that aren't necessarily there or struggle with that, right? I mean, Bob, you got a perfect example. Your own daughter, right? Sounds like she's coachable. She's got someone that's been there, done that, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these founders don't have that ability. They haven't been there, done that. This is their first go around. So sort of what do you guys think is those attributes that a founder should have that's going to make them coachable? I think I know one of them, but I'll let you guys tell me.
I just went through helping another software company, and there were 2 founders, and there was one person who was a COO, and he was entirely coachable. He wanted to learn, he wanted to listen. He was totally self-confident, but his self-confidence allowed him to believe he didn't know everything, that he could learn stuff, that he could be making mistakes, maybe there's other ways to do it, and he was entirely coachable. The CEO, somehow he felt that if you told him there was another way to do it or he wasn't doing something right, it was a personal affront.
Right.
There was, it said something about his capability, his personality, and ultimately, by the way, that company, that CEO burned through $100 million, practically destroying the company. In the end, the CEO went, the COO stepped up as CEO, raised more money, and he's now driving that company, and they're doing a fantastic job. And it was like the clear difference between 2 types of people.
So it's a personality thing in a lot of respects, right? I mean, is it an ego thing? Is it I'm in this position for a particular reason, and it's going to be kind of my way or highway, right? I mean, that's going to be resistant in my view, I think.
So for me, it all boils down to like one thing, which is the ability to self-reflect, right? So is a founder the type of person who's going to look at, hey, this situation is not going the way I wanted to. What am I doing to make this situation better? What did I do that impacted this, right? If the founder is self-reflective, or if anybody is self-reflective, they will generally be effective at listening to other points of view and incorporating those points of view.
Right.
If it's somebody who's like, no, I got it. I know exactly what I want to do. I'm not thinking about, oh, you know what? That didn't work. It's somebody else's fault. Those are generally the people who can't listen, partner, learn, and fix things. So self-reflection for me is the key attribute.
I'm going to boil this down to it's got to be the right fit. ultimately, everyone is coachable. Everyone is willing to listen. On the other side of that coin, everyone is rigid and everyone is stubborn. It's all about the fit and the dynamic. If you come in to a brilliant individual who, under normal circumstances, doesn't listen to anyone, but you're able to mesh with that person in such a way that you develop a rapport and it's a great working relationship, they're going to be coachable and they're going to work with you. If it's not the right fit, it's never going to be the right fit, and don't try to force it.
Yeah.
At the very same time.
So with that, I mean, I think that's from our perspective, whether the advisor or at the executive level, we have to have the ability to be coachable ourselves, to be able to say, okay, look, it's not working. If Rick's doing it, it's not working. Is there someone else that can do it, right? We have to be able to accept that, okay, maybe we're not the ones. Maybe there's someone else on our team or someone else we can get in there to help with the situation. Right?
I think Rick's point is a good one in that it is about it. So when you're in a particularly difficult spot, right, it doesn't become a one-on-one game. It's zone, right? So this becomes about gathering allies, getting perspectives, and making knowing what the decision's going to be before you show up in the room. Right. So it's like, okay, we got to make this call. I know what this person's position is. How are we going to influence that person's position? I'm going to have conversations with the other 3 people that are going to be in that room, try and coalesce towards a space. And then, that person doesn't know they're being cornered, but they basically are, right? Because you already know the outcome before you walk in there. It's a great point about how to deal with difficult folks. To me, the one-on-one piece does boil down to, can we make this thing work? But when you're in a difficult spot like that, absolutely influence is a good play.
I would have to vehemently disagree to the point that there's organizations where people are coachable and you can, everything you just said. And then there's a little bit harder than that. And then there's organizations where you walk in and you meet the person and you understand, and your best course of action is say, I'm not going to be able to help you. This is
Oh yeah,
That's the walk
There are
away
times when you pull the plug.
Exactly.
I just want to say there are times.
No,
100%,
you're
100%.
right. You are. I had a client interaction a couple of years back where it was a phased project.
Yeah.
And we went through the first phase, and I took copious notes. And then we went to the delivery meeting, and the CEO of the company said, "This is absolutely not what I wanted." And he's berating his COO co-founder about everything going hand in hand with it. And then he looks at me and tries to lay into me. And I'm like, well, here's my pages of notes of everything I wrote down from when we spoke. And this is what we gave you. And then he asked me, okay, well, we're moving on to phase 2. Are you in for the ride? I said, no. Yeah. I don't think I'm not the right guy for you. Yeah. If you're trying to push a stone uphill.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
Right.
You push a rope or push a string, right? It's not very easy to do. I mean, good for you, Bob, for bringing that up. I mean, it's really, you got to know when to say, this isn't going to work, right?
For sure. That definitely happens.
Know when to fold.
I always think of, I was telling these venture guys, they had just funded a startup, and they said, Bob, we want to bring you in as CEO. Go meet the guy. And I met the CEO, and I called up the venture guys, and I said, not going to work, And they're like, no, you're a perfect fit. Your whole background, everything about it, it's going to be perfect. And I'm like, no, it's just not for me. And they kept pushing me. And I finally said, look, I asked the current CEO how something worked. And he said, just trust me. And my point is, life's too short. Exactly. It's just too short to, but I loved the venture guys, these 2 venture guys. Absolutely loved them. And I finally agreed to go be CEO. They funded the company. 2 weeks later, I called them up and said, look, I was right. Yeah. You were wrong. You should take your money back, shut it down. And in the end, we all got together at one of the venture person's house, and the CEO jumped up on the guy's dining room table, started tearing his shirt off, saying, beat me, just beat me. Oh I mean, the answer was, I was right, they were wrong. Right. We shouldn't have gone forward in that. And that guy wasn't going to be coachable, no matter how much you did.
Good call, Bob.
Every time I've had that feeling, and I've gone ahead and done something anyway, I'm like, this isn't right, this isn't going to work, this isn't the right fit, whatever. And I put that aside, and we're going to do it anyway. I've regretted it.
Of course,
every
because you go
single
against your
time.
gut. Every time you go against your gut on something like that, it's probably going to backfire one way or another, right? We know that probably in life, generally speaking. So we've talked sort of about building, growing, discipline. I want to back up a little bit. I want to talk about what would each one of you tell a founder before they're going to raise capital? What's sort of the one kind of tidbit of information? And Rick, I'll start with you.
Get organized. You need to know your business. If you want to go into an investor meeting, you've got to be confident, and the confidence is going to come from being organized and knowing the details cold. Rehearse it, practice it, revisit it, refine it before you start. Go into an investor call and they ask a question. The worst answer you can give is, I didn't even know about that. It's okay to say, I've got to get back to you on something. We've addressed it. We are considering it. I've got to come back to you. It is not okay to say, I didn't know.
Well, I agree with everything that Rick just said, but my other point would be, you're going to the investor and you're trying to tell a story. If there's part of the stories where you just sort of regurgitate out your story, but you don't have the answers to, the investor isn't going to figure out the answers to your questions. You have to help educate them and show them the path of how you're going to market, what you're doing, and it has to make sense. And if you can't tell the story in simple format that it just makes sense for anyone listening, then you're not ready yet.
I always go back to what Mr. Wonderful says when on Shark Tank is, if you don't know the numbers, I don't want to talk to you, right? You got to have that down cold, to your point, right? I mean, you got to know what it is you're selling, what it is you want us to get involved or get embroiled with, right?
I would say the one other thing to couple on all that, and I know we'll get a chance over here in a second, is don't read your slides. That no one wants to go. And then we went up to the market. Know it. The slides should drive conversation.
They're just backup. Yes, they're backup. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have said a lot of great stuff. I mean, it's about telling your story effectively. The one thing that I would add is know what the money's for, right? Like you can't show up and be asking for money and not know how you're going to deploy that capital. I've seen folks fall on their face with that one.
Right. You think some of this is common sense, but in some level it is, but you still have to bring this stuff up to them. You really got to be able to coach them in this respect, because while they might think they know it, they don't really know it. But hearing it, I think, just reinforces it for everybody. This has been great. Thank you guys immensely for joining us. Thank you to the viewers and to the people participating here. We appreciate you being here. I appreciate the panel, Dan, Rick, and Bob. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
It's great having you. Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for watching. Please feel free to follow us on social media. You can like, comment, or subscribe. And please go to our website, gesmer.com.